one of the concepts in Japanese writings that I've always been kind of drawn to is whenever they tackle the idea of viewing the story through the eyes of a villain. It's something that Death Note definitely pulled off, in my opinion. It was a series that, when you watched it, at some point you realized that you were rooting for the bad guy, even though you knew deep down in your heart they are definitely bad people. You still follow the villain, and at some point you found yourself cheering for them, and you go, whoa, wait, 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 am I supposed to be doing this? It's a gray area that a lot of storytellers pull off and pull off fantastically. But it's not always pulled off fantastically. This is a review of Talentless Nana, or Munou na Nana, a series that premiered in the fall 2020 anime season. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm immediately dumping on this series, but it basically paints a picture for you of what my expectations were as I kind of started gradually going into this series. It essentially opens up with a classroom of kids that are on a remote island. This classroom of kids all have special abilities, whether it be, controlling fire, controlling ice, reading minds, uh, teleportation, all that kind of stuff. And it immediately kind of follows Nano, a boy that's in that class, and there's this new student named Nana who shows up. And then quickly within the first episodes, soft spoilers here if you want to go into it completely blind, within this first episode, Nana is killed by Nana, this girl that just showed up. And we quickly find out that Nana is actually powerless. She claims that she can read minds, but it's actually her reading people and making them believe that she can read minds. And thus begins this kind of concept where these kids with magical abilities are in this classroom to train to fight these enemies of humanity, these alien enemies of humanity. But Nana is there kind of hired and trained through some kind of organization that wants to kill these talented people. And so the idea throughout the series is her trying to figure out how she can kill these students without being found out, and of course overcoming their special abilities. If you don't have any magic, supernatural abilities, you have to figure out a way to kill somebody that can time travel, or somebody that can teleport, or whatnot. And so the concept there is okay. Coming into it, it's like, okay, we're following the bad guy. Let's see what you can do. I think the only thing that where it kind of falls apart a little bit is the fact that, unfortunately, nobody's likable in this series. And that's kind of the difficulty, because, of course, with series that you do kind of follow the bad guy, sometimes you can, I guess, either relate to what they're upset about and what drives them as a bad guy. In the case of like Death Note, you're following somebody who just wants to exact justice where justice is not being served. And so it becomes the Batman concept. It's the guy who get their hands dirty, even though the actual law doesn't like them doing that. They don't like that vigilante. And with this particular series, you don't really get an idea of what's driving Nana. What is her motivation? Is it because she feels that the people with superpowers killed her family? Does it mean that are the enemies of humanity even existing? Are they just there to be disposed of? All those questions I don't really feel get completely answered by the end of the series. And so you're kind of given multiple facets. You either are driven by the characters themselves. Do you like Nana? Do you like who she's going up against? Is there a feeling of rivalry? Is there a feeling of rooting for one side or the other? Or there's the other ones where there is, okay, I'm fascinated by the overall story. What is the reason for the kids being there? Who is the enemy of humanity? Do they even exist? Then the last one would be the concept of, I guess, the cat and mouse game. Will she get caught? How does she overcome other people's abilities? And I think that's really where it kind of sticks to. Since the story itself, for the most part, for at least this anime adaptation for this particular 13 episodes, I would say probably 10 or so episodes of that is really, the character's not really being there, not wanting to really find yourself attached to anybody particular. It just becomes the game of how she can kill people. So you're not really rooting for anybody. because Nana is pretty. She's fairly cold-hearted, which makes sense. It's perfectly makes sense that she would be cold-hearted. She wouldn't be flamboyant. She wouldn't be charismatic. She wouldn't be. There wouldn't be any kind of personality there that would get in the way of her being able to commit to what her job is, which is to kill these students. So most of the time, all you're really doing is going, okay, well, here's the next challenge for her. This one can freeze things. How is she going to overcome that? Okay, next challenge. This one can see the future. How does she overcome that? Which is, again, a cool concept because you're getting these ideas of what their powers are, and then with her kind of trying to figure out how you would overcome that. Granted, for most of the time, it kind of plays the card of you think that she's getting foiled, but then suddenly the person's up dead, and then she reveals what she actually did to pull it off. So you don't really get to be there with her throughout the entire thing. But for the most part, it's pretty clever in that regard. I think the only thing that really did upset me was I of course, I wanted to root for somebody. I wanted to have that gray area of like, oh, okay, so these talented are pretty nasty. Well, granted, they do technically try to make each one of them a little bit nasty so that it makes it okay for her to kill them. I don't know why I keep doing air quotes. But it wasn't enough for me to actually... It didn't make Nana redeemable anyway. And at some point later on in the series, you do kind of have this character that does come to the forefront who is more, I guess, pure and innocent, and you're kind of wondering how the writer is going to handle killing off a character that, no doubt, I mean, Nana at this point is pretty irredeemable, but you know that the moment that she kills this character, it's over. Like, she is nasty. Like, you cannot stomach watching her anymore. And it was kind of funny to try to figure out, like, is the writer going to do this? Is the writer going to actually do this and make Nana 100%, maybe 200% irredeemable at this point? It handled it pretty well in how it kind of handled that situation. Not to say that he pulled it off or anything like that, but it handled it well. The I guess the biggest frustration with the series, and it is going to be the biggest stain for it, and even if I do say that there's these concepts in here that are good, there's one thing, and you guys know that I try to be as positive as possible about series and give you the idea of what in it is, you know, the substance that's in it that you should enjoy. There is or you don't have to enjoy. There's one thing that I never forgive when it comes to series. We all know that these series are essentially advertisements for manga and light novel and whatnot, so it happens a lot. And this one is kind of the most gravest example of a series doing what we call the manga bait. It is a series that was through and through created to sell the manga. And you know that based on the fact that there is very little effort put into trying to make it a closed chapter. Like in the case where something does this well, this idea of being an advertisement but not being, I guess, wrong with it, is where they'll try to make it to where it's a complete chapter. You feel like you've closed a book or a volume, and yeah, you would like to see more, but it doesn't feel like you've been robbed of your time. And unfortunately, with Talentless Nana, it does feel like I was robbed of my time because, granted, I didn't feel like it was going to tell the complete story. I don't feel like she's going to wipe out the entire island and the enemy of humanity is going to be revealed and the organization she worked with is going to be overthrown or something. But it was one of those... It felt like I just literally turned a page. It was mid-sentence. I turned a page. I wasn't even halfway through the book, and it just stopped. When you have that feeling of like, wait, is there supposed to be another episode? That's when something's wrong. And this one definitely did that. Granted, the last episode was easily the best of the entire series, and it was really kind of a growing thing from like the episode 10 mark, that I started feeling like, oh, hey, we're having Nana have conflict. She has inner conflict. And it was something that I was actually expecting to happen earlier in the series, especially with the way that they portray the ending music for these series, or the ED. It was something that I was expecting earlier in the series, this idea of Nana eventually being conflicted by what she's doing, even though, again, she's irredeemable by the first episode. I do like that idea of, even though I'm perfectly fine with following a villain, I'm perfectly fine with them not being in the gray area. I just want to be able to see something interesting from the villain. And it didn't feel like there was any of that for a majority of the show. And about like 3/4 into the series, she started feeling conflicted. And I'm like, okay, cool. The writer's going to do something here. It's not just going to be the game of cat and mouse, how does she overcome her powers? It's going to be that plus what is happening with Nana inside her mind. And it really did climax at that last episode, that 13th episode. It just peaked. And unfortunately, like I said, I turned the page and the page was blank. And it just had writing in the middle of it saying, "See you in the manga." And that frustrates me, because it makes it something that it's not easily suggestible to people. Now, granted, if you are somebody that likes reading manga and you're perfectly fine with something introducing you to a new manga, definitely check it out. Jump into it, watch it, and see if it hooks you at the end and gives you a reason to want to jump into the manga. Because honestly, for me, I feel like I want to jump into the manga. I have way too many already that I have to read at this point. But if I didn't have a lot of things I need to read already, it would be something that I would be interested to jump into. So if you are, again, somebody that does like to jump into mangas, likes to jump into light novels after watching anime series, check it out. Unfortunately, if you're somebody that's like, I hate reading manga, I will never touch it, it's hard to sell. It's very hard to sell. If you're going to run into that same thing I did, you're going to run into that stopping point at the page turn with a big O sign that says read the manga. And that's, again, the unfortunate thing. I honestly don't like having to say that. But unfortunately, there's a lot of cases where they purposely do that. They purposely leave that cliffhanger that makes you have to pick up or in some cases, they will have sequels. But unfortunately, at this point that I'm recording, I haven't seen anything notifying that there's going to be a sequel. So we'll see. We'll see in the future. There might be something that pops up. And at that point, I can make a new video and say I was wrong. But at this point, unfortunately, I'm right. So hope you guys enjoy this review of Talentless Nana. Check it out again if everything in here doesn't scare you away from it. We hope you guys enjoyed, and y'all take care.